There's a lot of misunderstanding as far as what our veterans go through. Those of us who have not been in the military or deployed have very little understanding of what our soldiers go through and these defenders of our rights and our freedoms are actually dealing with. So when they come home, there are also things, personal, very personal things and situations and behaviors that we really don't understand. They come home and we want to, honor our heroes and celebrate them just being home, welcoming them home. But what we're failing to miss is all of these underlying mental roadblocks or speed bumps, so to speak, and how they can so negatively affect not only their lives, but the people's lives around them, their loved ones, and anybody they're associated with working, being reintegrating into the work field. So what happens? Like, what happens when you're deployed? What changes? What's going on?
So when it comes to being deployed, I mean, it's just like an aging thing, but it's not aging in the way you think of, oh, I'm aging from 31 to 32. It's a different concept of aging. Like you're aging your thought process of life to from like adolescence to something completely different. A lot of people don't know how to handle that kind of aging because they come home and nothing makes sense.
Nothing is as in like
They
how to act on a
like they don't understand why Susie Q is losing her mind because they accidentally used whole milk instead of almond milk in her latte.
okay.
And that is a poor example, by the way.
But I get it.
But it's they when you see these everyday, like when you come, like when you before you get deployed, you're used to seeing all these, everything's normal. Like you're going out, you see somebody being miserable down the street, that's normal. Like, okay, that's normal for these kinds of people, or that, for these kinds of workers, or for you to do this and you to do that. And it turns into you go through all these different experiences, you're forced to make choices and decisions and experience a lot of different things that most of the people that have actually been through it won't generally talk about publicly.
Mm.
Um, they'll talk about it in private in very, very small groups to help people, but they will not make it public information. Like they won't put it out on podcasts. Most of them, very few will. And if they are, it's for their own. That's fine. You do you. But most of the time, people who have don't generally talk about it. And
Would you consider these traumatic experiences that they're keeping secret and or they're embarrassed of? Like, why aren't they being shared?
because it's hard, because when you explain them, it sounds not as bad as it was.
Okay.
Because you can't explain what you see and why you experience it. Be like, well, I watched a kid get the crap beat out of them,
Yeah.
but you watch kids get the crap beat out of them in high school.
Yeah.
It's normal. You watch kids, you know, we got in fights when we were in high school, right?
Right.
Because that was normal, just growing up. But and that was, just an example. But when you try and explain these different things, people are just like, okay, why are you having a problem? Like, what is your issue? So that's when a lot of people kind of start to clam up because it's just like, I don't feel like trying to explain myself in something dumb.
So do you not get help, like the help to de-escalate some of these situations that you've been through and how they have like created chaos in your mind now?
Some people do, a lot don't, because there's a stigma. Because there's therapists out there that will just sit there and give you the textbook answer and that's it, because they're there to get their dollar and call it a good day. Some that's their prerogative, okay. But the ones who don't want to just see people walk in and out of their door who actually care, unfortunately don't always get to, wrangle all the people who are slipping through the cracks.
But what about while you're on duty? What about while you're active? Is there any, are you getting any kind of support or help?
We're offered the help,
Okay.
but we hide it well.
Oh.
And so it's very easy for us to avoid being confronted about it until it becomes a problem, if it becomes.
Are you trained to hide it?
We're trained, we're, I don't want to say trained to hide it. It's not really the right way to put it. I think putting our emotions aside to handle the mission is more or less the better way to say it. Because I don't want to say hiding our emotions is a way what we're trained to do. We're trained to handle the mission. And so we take that and apply it to our normal everyday lives because like, okay, well, we can use this every day. Just gotta, I don't have to put this out there for anybody to see.
Yeah, yeah.
So, and you are 100% right. There is a whole lot that come when we come home after the fact. It just is a culture shock. It's a reculture shock because we went from a normal life to a third world country in the in the last war. That's a whole culture shock for us for no way that I've ever seen that before. And then coming back to our homes to a totally different type of culture shock. We watched our lives look completely different to our own selves. Everything about our own lives isn't the same. Everything that we saw in our own heads isn't the same.
Even when you came back to the same place, it's
It
not
could
the
be the
same
exact same place, the same people, kids sitting on the couch. Nothing will ever, this is my experience.
Yeah.
And from what I've seen, I've heard a lot of people say it's about the same thing, where it's just, yes, you're the same people. You love these people. You love your kids. You love your wife. You love your mom and dad, your siblings, etc. But none of it is the same. It's how you see it. For example, when I came home for my first deployment, I was engaged, and unfortunately, just on the toilet, to just put it simply. And well, I was very attached. Now with her boys, I've been there since one was born, since the other one was basically a baby, and but they weren't mine. But I was dad.
Sure.
And I had that rug kind of yanked out from underneath me. And that's not something you're really ready for.
Because of a failed relationship or because of deployment?
It's more of because the failed relationship part was kind of like it was already on its like it was already on the rocks, there were already problems happening. And at that point I was just trying to hold everything together and take care of them while trying to figure out what I wasn't understanding because I was sure that I was missing something.
And you had already been deployed.
Yeah, this is
okay.
yeah, this
okay,
is,
so
this is after.
you've already got this distorted sense of what's going on and trying to reintroduce yourself into normal civilian life.
Yeah, and everything from what I initially thought was normal, or what I as normal as it could be, because I didn't understand. I was still really young at the time. I was only 21, 22 at the time. So nothing like what was normal at that time. Like before that, before I left my first deployment, I was a massive alcoholic. I was an alcoholic for years. I had a lot of problems before.
In the military too? Did it continue?
Actually, after my first, I kind of went up and down with the alcohol. That separation was never as bad as it was before my first deployment, but I kind of played with it. But then there's a point where I'm just like,
Done.
it just wasn't worth it because just recovery is never worth the time.
Uh-huh, that's for sure.
Uh,
That's hard. That's,
Good Lord, I see people that are like 20 years older than me. I'm like drinking like a fish. I'm like, how do you do it?
I have a friend who says, I know I have another drink in me. And I also know I don't have another recovery in me. Cause it's hard.
It is. I can tell you I've had one drink this year, and that was a glass of wine.
Didn't feel good.
It was okay. It was whatever. Tasted like grape juice. It didn't really do anything for me, but I didn't. But then again, I really didn't want it. I also made sure I'd eaten a lot more prior to, because like I'd made it. I'm just like, I will have this, so you're not doing this alone.
You know, and what a shame that our culture is like that. It makes the person not drinking feel weird or out of place if we're not partaking in the norm.
And normally, I tell anybody who tries to push me to drink, no, because like I don't,
Yeah.
especially if it's hard. Like I will have very, very special occasions. I will have like a good scotch on a very, very, very special occasion. It's
But for the most part, alcohol doesn't work for you.
Nope.
You had at one point in time, an addiction with it.
Yep.
So an addiction is usually something that we are using as a crutch because we're trying to either numb something
Mhm.
or like disassociate from it. Do you think that when you were younger, before you joined the military, there was something that you were pulling yourself or escaping from with the alcohol?
well, I started drinking when I was super young.
Yeah.
I want to say I was like 13, 14. But I wasn't like getting hammered at 13, 14.
That's
I started,
young.
like, just trying it, figuring out like what's this stuff supposed to be like. Like I knew what it was, but
Okay.
that's also when I started smoking. As I hit high school, that's when I started, partying with my friends. We had a place that we parked though. Like we didn't just go party in random places. We had a place we partied
Hard.
hard,
I got carried away.
aggressively.
Okay. Okay.
But it was always us though. It was never like, at some random house. It was never, at least not with me. Like I know they sometimes all, went to some other places, but me, I've always been kind of a particular drinker. Occasionally on a blue moon, I would go other places, and then when I moved around, I would obviously start drinking places. But in high school, that was that one spot. Right.
So this relationship just started when you came back from the first deployment.
Mhm.
You were sober for the most part?
Oh yeah, Afghanistan
Okay.
sobered me up. I was forced to sober.
Okay, so you were sober, but the relationship was just unraveling?
Yeah, it
Thank
just
you.
it unraveled. It was, I don't know what exactly happened. I still don't necessarily understand what happened, but
What did that do to you mentally?
her and the part between her and I wasn't necessarily the part that really sent me spiraling. Like it bugged me a lot, like
Mhm.
because it, like the unfaithfulness part, like there's stuff there that just didn't sit right with me.
Okay,
It was having the boys take,
okay.
being a dad, like I realized was like the most important.
So you said it started to set you off. What does that mean? It's what happened?
I started to spiral when I realized I was losing the floor. The floor was like disappearing as I realized that there was nothing underneath it. It was just going to be a plumb.
So spiraling means panic attacks, means you
Like
couldn't
panic,
work,
like
means,
just like there's like I wasn't gonna. like there was no saving, nothing I could do. I wasn't sleeping,
Depressed,
depressed, working as often as possible, but
Mhm.
also, I don't know, I just like the whole thing was just like one giant zombie walking blur of just anxiety, depression.
Do you think a lot of that has to do with coming back from being at war and just not knowing how to sort through?
So I've kind of dialed it into the boys were an anchor when I came.
Mhm,
They grounded.
mhm,
Being a dad was a ground.
mhm.
You know, it gave me purpose, if
Yeah,
that makes
sure.
sense. So when you have your purpose taken, because like anybody, get a job, any job. When you have purpose, real purpose, and that gets taken away from you, that's, I don't want to say it's impossible to replace, but it's hard to replace. And especially when it's so fresh.
And you just didn't have it, you didn't have it in you, or you didn't know how to take the next step and just like
I had
be you for you.
I had no coping skills from that because it was happening that fast.
So is it, would you compare it to like when you were in the military, you were on a mission, right? You had a mission, you knew what you had to do, you knew what was, you didn't, everything's uncertain, I'm sure, when you're in the military.
Yeah, right. Like there's always a sense of uncertainty.
Right. But you have a mission and you know what your action steps are supposed to be, right? And then you come home and then the mission of being a father is kind of taken away from you. So is it like an identity thing?
Kind of. It's identity. It's so,
Like what happened? So the rug comes out from underneath you and
and
then,
you just kind of fall, and
okay.
there's not a bottom. You're like looking. You're trying to find the bottom to catch or the ledge to catch. There's nothing to catch
So what,
because you don't know what to look at that because it's just that there's just nothing to catch.
where were you living when this happened?
Uh,
And then
and
did she move out? Did you move out?
I had stuff.
Where'd you go?
I ended up actually moving in with her sister and brother-in-law
Okay,
because they were nice enough to give me a place to stay.
yeah.
And then a couple months later, I ended up packing all my stuff and moving out to Philadelphia.
Oh, you left the
Yeah,
area.
I did an interstate transfer, transferred my union, transferred job out there, and just 3 days. The state headquarters hadn't even heard of interstate transfer happening fast.
So you went out there and then what? You started a new life? Did you, everything was great or
Oh, no,
like
it
what?
was still
Not
a
good.
massive mess, but I'm just like, I need a different space. That's not what I do. And it wasn't any easier. It was just different. I just needed to not keep seeing the same things.
That was
And
helpful for you? I mean, you were still depressed?
oh yeah, it still took a few months to really come around.
Okay.
It definitely took a few months because I was still dealing with her because she was at the time it was just a toxic situation between us.
And from both ends?
Yeah, for both of us.
Okay.
It really was because like I started becoming somebody that I started very mean, very
Mhm.
um, abrasive towards her.
So how did you work through that?
I definitely started because when I started to realize like how awful, like, 'cause I caught myself one day, like, because I walked past a mirror, just how angry I was. Just
Saw it.
I saw what I looked like when I was saying those things. I'm like, oh, this is not, that's ugly. And so I had to start, like, I need to stop. I made sure that anything that had anything to do with her was, if I had anything there, it was gotten.
Yeah.
If she,
Yeah.
or so, and we just kind of cut ties.
So was that like a moment of realization? Were you placing blame up until that point? Were you taking responsibility to that point? And then you saw that just the anger and the emotion on you and you were like, whoa.
There was at first I did. There's a lot of. That's just more or less what it was. It was all confusion. I started getting angry because I didn't understand. I never understood why anything was happening. There was no explanation. I didn't have any answers to anything. So, um, it, and then at that point, without answers, I started to put blame, and then it just kept escalating.
The snowball. Yeah. Blame, shame, guilt, all of that just snowballed.
Oh yeah.
So when you caught yourself in the mirror, was that like a pivotal moment? And then you started taking different steps in a different direction or?
Yeah, that was definitely kind of like a turning point of this. I got off the phone. This needs to stop. Like, I just didn't talk to her after that because I knew my stuff was out. But we were still just being awful, and it just needed to stop. And so I had to start making adjustments in my life. I had to start occupying my time instead of sitting by myself in the apartment, just
Sulking and having a
sulking,
pity party.
just not doing anything. And I wasn't eating, I was just drinking again.
Oh, back to drinking.
I wasn't like doing like the hammered thing, but I was sipping. I was sipping and sitting.
Yeah.
Which again, you shouldn't do, by the way.
Right.
That is a funnel. That is
Right.
a fatal funnel of bad decisions. Because that is a gateway. It takes you down to more.
Right.
Because then you start to go buy the expensive stuff because you start to acquire fancy taste.
So you realized that you had to start doing things rather than just sitting around. Sitting is so dangerous because it lets the devil just kind of take over in your mind.
The devil's in details. As much as self-reflection is important, everybody should definitely take time for themselves a few times a week. Meditate, pray, however you got to do it. Self-reflection is super important. And when you do it, you have to be honest with yourself. And if you're doing it, like everybody can do it differently. I meditate a couple different ways. If you have to, write it down. But you're not gonna like what you see, I promise. At first, you're definitely not. And throughout it, like the years, like even today, like I'll run into things that I don't like. See in certain self-reflections, be like, wow, I did not act appropriately, or like that could have definitely been handled differently.
So you think writing is helpful?
Writing is absolutely helpful.
Yeah.
I think it is pivotal to understand where you went and to meditate on that and but when you're done with it, don't hold on. Understand that you did wrong and get rid of it. I don't care if you got to ball it up, burn it. I went through a program a few years ago, and we wrote a bunch of letters, and we called it the ceremony of the dead. In those letters, we poured our hearts out to whom or what, either to ourselves or to whomever we thought we did all these things to, or that we thought we did have these catastrophic effects on. And
Was that part of a 12-step?
No, it was a better program, but
Something for veterans?
yeah, it was an intensive 4 days. There's another one that's like it. When I get the name, I'll send it to you. I can't remember.
Yeah, and then we'll include that in the show notes. Because that sounds, I mean, writing things down versus just thinking about them are two different stories. When you're forced to look at something on paper, especially when it's about you, your actions, an event that happened, it activates a part of your brain and allows you to process it differently
Mhm.
versus just thinking a thought. When you put it down on paper, you make it physical. It's an actual tangible thing.
And it is so important when you write these things down that you keep them private to yourself. Do not share these with people. Share them with yourself and yourself. This is for you and your reflection. If you have to share with somebody, if you feel like this is bugging you so much that it is just haunted you that bad, if you have one person that you trust more than anybody else in the world, that is the only person you should share.
So you
And-
started, go ahead.
So, and like, cause I have like one or two people like that, really.
That you can share with.
And even then, they still don't get all the things just because I'm a private person. It's just who I
Yeah.
am. And
Does that burn you though? Does it eat at you? Keeping
no, I've learned to over the years. First off, I've learned to compartmentalize. And as I got older, as I would handle things healthily,
Mhm,
the compartmentalizing and the healthy handling
mhm.
started to work together.
Okay.
So, be like, okay, this happened. Let's put this over here for right now. We're gonna handle this either later tonight, or we're gonna handle this in a couple of days like food law. Because sometimes you need a couple of days to let something simmer before you handle it.
I agree.
Because I cannot stress it enough how many times I have thought with my ex-wife that, and I wish we hadn't kept fighting, because like you fight about something and you really, the fight's over after 5 minutes. Like there's nothing after 5 minutes in my part. This is my, after 5 minutes into a fight that needs to be said.
Or that's going to be productive.
That's going to be productive because everything at that point has been said. Everybody talks 1,000 minutes per second in fight or a disagreement.
Yeah.
And all the proper information has been stated, and both people need to walk away. And that means you just say, all right, rain check, or have like or pineapple, or whatever you want your keyword to be, and come back in 2 days. Both of you go write something down about it. Write down your angry stuff first, throw it away, and then start writing down your productive stuff.
Mhm.
Give yourself a couple of days. That is the key. I wish I would have been smarter in my marriage about a lot of things. And I'm not saying that would have fixed everything. There's a whole
But you never know. I mean, in hindsight, right?
hindsight's 2020, but communication in any relationship, whether it be your best friend, family, your wife, your kids, I mean, even the people you work with, communication is the single most important thing in life with the people you're around. And you have to learn how to communicate. And fighting should never, like, if fighting's out, it's always going to happen. I hate fighting. I think it's a waste of energy, but it's never, everybody's going to.
So what happens when, like, the story just repeats itself over and over? Doesn't matter what veteran I'm talking with. It's almost like it's the same story, different version. There's such a hard time with communication when you come back. What happens when you're gone that interferes with your ability to have healthy communication?
I can answer part of that, and this is just from what I've kind of put together. And the comes down to, we're put in a position where we have to take orders, right?
Okay.
And we're not allowed to generally object to it.
Mhm.
Like we can't be like, no, I'm not gonna do that. Like, no, that's stupid. Why would you do that? That's a terrible idea. Can we discuss this? No, like, it's like, you're gonna go do this, you're gonna go do this mission.
Like it or not.
Like it or not, ramp brief, 2 minutes, let's go. Let's go do this. It doesn't matter how dumb it sounds. It doesn't matter where it came from. Now, don't get me wrong, there are people that stick up for you, but in the end, it's yes, sir, no, sir, yes, ma'am, no, ma'am. Yes, PSG, no PSG, etc. But this is where I got in trouble a lot because I didn't mind why I was a specialist for so because I have authority. I thought it was a great idea. I have no problem telling people when something's stupid. But that's not what the conversation we're having right now. No, it comes down to that's where the communication gets lost because we're put in a position where we have to say yes, Roger, okay. Like we're forced to be yes men. We don't, or yes men and women. It goes full force. There's no like maybes about it. It's like you are going to do this. You are going to go.
So then you come home and now it's just open and you have the opportunity to challenge things, so like.
And it's not intentional. It's not meant to be a malicious thing. It's not like we're
No.
choosing to, oh, you think you're gonna tell me what we're gonna have for dinner? That's fun. That's
Right.
cute. No, no, it's very unintentional because that's something I didn't really like piece it together until later on. Because I'm just like, because I did realize that a lot of my friends had a lot of people I deployed with and other people I know that deployed, they have a lot of communication problems. It's like, you know, all we do is argue.
Hey.
Hey, well, what's the argument? What's the argument? And then, so it turns into this, and so it turned, and I'm just like, that's it. That's what the problem is. We're all forced to be these yes men with, like, without any way to object to it. And then we're sent home with choices. We're not, you know, there, it's not a, and I'm not saying, you know, we should be, you know, reined in or anything, but like, we need to come home and understand, like, nobody's telling you what to do. Be like, hey, but maybe there needs to be like a communication class on both sides, like for like the wife and the husband, be like, listen, they're not telling you what to do, they're asking. They're trying to have a conversation with you. And then like with, or you know, for the spouse, be like, don't approach them like you're, you know, like you're telling them what to do. Approach it as a conversation. What do you think about having this for dinner? Or what do you think about doing this weekend? You know, because it really is that. And it it's all just about how you approach things and people with this communication.
That's a good point. It's almost like a decompression period because there's the other side to being deployed or coming back from a mission. And the other side is the spouse, the children, the family, the friends. We don't know how to interact either because you went over there and were given this new identity. And then you come back and you look like the same person we saw when you left. Or even if, you know, it's a new person that you're just meeting when you come back. We don't know what you've been through. We don't know what you've experienced. And there's no reintroduction for you process. And there's no like informative session for the other people, the loved ones and the friends on the other side. So how do you plug that in? That's the communication issue.
You're not wrong. And I think the biggest part of that is that when you go over there, we leave a part of ourselves. And I think every time we do go there, it's another piece that sticks. And the first time you go is the biggest piece. And I think the biggest piece that you leave, I don't want to say it's your innocence, but it's the piece that most people love about you. Most, it's that spark that most people say, oh, he was this amazing, it's that, we're gonna get dark here for a second, and I'm not trying to make it dark, but you hear about people coming home from deployment and, committing suicide. And you hear their, eulogies, and people speak like, oh, we had this spark and this energy, and that's usually what gets left. And usually the people that don't, and that you see them trying to imitate their spark until they can find a new way to have a different.
Do you think it is while you're in the military, they give you this, they kind of form who you're gonna be, or they have this avatar? You're gonna be this, you're gonna act like that, you're gonna do this, you're gonna go here. So it kind of replaces the identity that you had before you went in there, and then when you come out, is it like, now what? Now who am I? What am I supposed to be doing? Like, who am I?
A little bit, I think it's a little bit of that, and they do. I'm not crap talking, but I think they need to care a little bit more.
I agree, yeah.
And when I say a little bit, I mean
A lot of it.
and so I have to kind of watch how much I say about it because I still belong to them. So, but it's the first time is always, in my opinion, the biggest piece you leave. And I'm not gonna sit here and say, oh, well, if you went here, that's when you did this and that. I'm like, you want something? I'm not here to judge on where you've been deployed and here to say one way or the other. Everybody is different. Everybody's been through what they've been through. Judge, say, whatever. That's between you, and the good Lord, and your psych, and
Sure.
your psychiatrist and your
Yeah.
family. Okay, I'm not here to state one way or the other, but I have seen people who are those amazing, full-hearted people come home and they're just not that. And not because they're not that loving person, but because that person's not there. That part of them just got left because they were forced to grow up. They were forced to leave it. They weren't able to mature that part of themselves. They were forced to take it out, put it in a box, and leave it.
And I mean, we fail our veterans big time by not offering the appropriate resources through the system. So it is all of these little organizations, these neighborhood organizations that do these small community fundraisers that actually provide resources and funding for, people who are struggling, veterans who are struggling to go into some type of program to help them fit back into society and find their way. And through the system, and I have personal experience with this, the system has failed so many people that I have tried to help, so many people very close to me, over and over and over again. The billboards, the 1-800 numbers, I haven't found any kind of resolution with them.
And the social media too, you see all the fake stuff on social media.
Yeah.
Because a lot of, you see a lot of veterans that have like, in, thousands upon thousands, if not tens of thousands of dollars of debt. And you say, oh, come get your veterans debt with you. And they just get suckered into something and they're tripling. And
Scams.
and then they really do go. Then it sucks because they do get hurt. They're hurt. Their families get hurt. Their friends get hurt around them because that is a ripple, and nobody's stopping them either, scamming. And like, you know, and it's on social media, they have, these companies have departments in
Yeah.
their companies. I'm an analyst, that's what I do for work. Like, they have companies that are literally designed, that their sole purpose is to find these people and make them stop, and they don't.
Veteran suicide is a huge problem.
Mm.
Can you see why? Like from your intimate perspective, why? Why is it so high? I mean, we've nailed on a couple different reasons, but is it because of that? You leave a piece of you and then you don't know who you are anymore?
And it's everything from being left with the basic, oh, well, call your first line leader, or let us know you need to talk to a chaplain, or recall, you know, call your Army One source, they'll help you. But the problem is, there's also a patience thing that needs to be understood as well by military members. It is a process finding the right help, not the first, the second, the third, sometimes even the fifth is not going to be the right person.
Mhm.
Finding help requires patience and time, but you have to include the people around you in your process, because they're going to be the ones that help you get there until you find that person. But that's the key, because a lot of people are all about, I'm going to shut you out
Yeah,
because I don't want you to see me like this.
right. Oh, yeah.
And that's where we lose them. There's like, oh, this didn't work, I'm going to stop. Oh,
So,
this didn't, and it also doesn't help that our health insurance is TRICARE.
yeah,
They're so limited, or have such a specific list, and it's impossible to figure it out. Or just, you know, and having to repeat yourself 100,000 times. So that's also, nobody wants to repeat themselves.
right. And then you got to tell the next person your story all over again.
And
So,
relive it.
yeah, so reliving it, that's, part of depression. That is part of what keeps you suppressing a lot of these things. So you were depressed, you moved,
Mhm.
you were still depressed, but you found that actually doing something to pull yourself out was helping.
Mhm.
And then what? So now you worked yourself out of depression, you worked yourself back into becoming the person you know you're supposed to be, like what?
I just started working more, so I'm looking for a different job, because working for a moving company just was not my idea of a good time. And I started working for a security company, doing, I was a traveling security officer, going to different job sites across Pennsylvania. And then I ended up working uh, at the oil refinery in South Philly for a few years.
Mhm.
Worked from the bottom, ended up being the secondary supervisor for the security department, contract security.
You're still in the military while you're doing all
Yep.
this? So
It's all
what were
National
you,
Guard, all National.
but what were you doing in the military?
I was a scout. I was
So you were working two jobs?
yeah, we'd go to drill once a month,
Oh,
and have our annual training in the summer
Okay.
in schools if they came about.
Okay.
And then I ended up getting hurt on a 10-mile run, like a stress fracture, and ended up in a boot. Never hurt myself like that before. And then happened to come up on my ETS, my out for my first contract. So 8 years. I was just like, oh, well, I needed a PT test, and I had been in a boot for 2 months, and nobody was going to help me. So
Right.
I was forced out, because I wanted to stay in, forced me in.
On medical?
No, just they forced me out of contract. The contract just ended.
So you were done? So what did that do to you?
I just took a year off, or like a year and a half off. That was terrible. Because it's not what I wanted, but I didn't have any control over the situation. And I did not handle that because in that time period, I had met my former wife,
Mhm,
and my daughter,
mhm,
who I have raised since she was 5,
mhm.
and she is now 17. Um,
So you didn't handle it well, meaning
so
what were you drinking,
I
like
gained
anger,
a crap load of weight.
overeating?
Overeating. I left. We had been dating a while at that point, and then I left, and then she chased me down. She chased me down. She's like, she had me come back. Ended up living with her, and then I was just still not. I just wasn't okay because still like I didn't resolve a lot of my issues because I was relying on my progress that I was making because I had other goals I was trying to meet before I handled other things. I was trying to get myself someplace else before handling other things.
Mhm. So you still had all those deep rooted issues that were holding you back. Touched. Okay.
When that good old snowball happened, I was not up. And so I left her again, and then I got bigger and bigger. I got up like a bear.
Mhm.
This was huge.
Yeah.
Um, and then I looked in the mirror one day because I'm not usually one to look and like I actually looked at myself. I'm like, you are gross looking. Like just it was like that's exactly what just came out of my mouth. Like it's just because like I'm not somebody that would ever generally let myself look like, and I did.
That mirror again.
It was a mirror.
Yeah.
Because I gotten out of the shower and I'm getting ready to go out. I'm just like, I'm not going out now. And I called my buddy, and who worked out at a local gym. It was a cross between a CrossFit and it was one of the Snap Fitness gyms. They had
Mhm.
had like a but they had done something else to it. But it was a lifting gym anyway. And he did competition lifting and all that stuff. I'm like, hey man, I need help. And then I called my best friend, like, hey, but I called him a couple weeks later because I wanted to do this by myself first, like with my buddy Bert, because I didn't know this part of working because I gotten into really good shape with my first deployment. Came along pretty good, but this was a different kind because now I needed to turn a lot of mass into muscle, and this is something I didn't know how to do. I knew how to lose weight, but I didn't know. But now I've got too much weight, and now I need to not just lose weight. I need to shift it. I need to do a mass to muscle exchange.
Yeah.
And so that's what he showed me how to do. And I started doing research, and I went from 300 pounds to 236. I was at like 48% body fat to 16% body fat. And then I went to active duty.
So was it more of you have to save yourself kind of thing? Like nobody can come in and save you. You had to make the realization and then make a decision because once you're faced with, oh shit, I did this. This is because of my actions. You can't expect somebody to swoop in and scoop you up and take you off to fix it all, right?
You, in the end, it is you that is going to save you. Now, I'm a firm believer, God, firm believer that you absolutely 200%, if you are stuck in a place and you don't know what to do, 100% you should pray. 2000% always. But when that answer comes to you, you better be prepared
Action, yeah.
because I promise you, before my ex fiance left me, I didn't I didn't disacknowledge God's existence, but I didn't have a relationship
Okay.
because I was angry. I was angry about a lot of different things. But when I lost her and the boys and everything else, I lapsed because I didn't go. That's when I begged him, asked for forgiveness, and that's when Philadelphia opened up. Literally 12 hours later. It just lined right up. And I went, I'm just like, if this, obviously this is where I'm supposed to be, because like, I'm not even questioning it. And, and it's just like, you get these aha moments. It's like these nudges in the direction you're supposed to.
But you have to act on them. Prayer without action is
Oh,
dead. Yeah.
But also be careful because, the other side is watching too. And they are going to give you options that seem like they're an option.
Mhm.
And they can come across as the right option too. They definitely can, because I've dealt with it.
And by the other side, you're talking about the devil and all the temptations and giving into vices and
Repeating the past.
yeah.
Repeating the past, it's never, you shouldn't ever do it unless it is something that has been done before that has been a positive.
Mhm.
And, been a positive to you and dis, um, doesn't show disrespect to God,
Mhm.
Jesus.
Mhm.
It's as a firm thing. Like if it's positive in your life, actually, do it again. But if it's not, don't. Like because I've been definitely in positions where it's like, man, it would just be easier if I just sucked it up and just, I guess, dealt with that. Why not just do that?
So you had this another interaction with the mirror
Yeah, I
and
know.
realized
It's always, and then like, I don't,
self-reflection.
well, the problem is I
Yeah.
really don't use them ever. I like,
Yeah, but how powerful that you have these wake up points in your life where it forces you to take a look at you and the choices that you've been making that led you to where you're at in that very moment. And then you can either continue to do what you've been doing and continue to get what you've been getting, or you can start taking action on doing something different of what you did. So now you're feeling good and then you get deployed again.
So I went to active duty. So instead of going back to the National Guard, active duty got stationed out at Fort Carson. Um, that was, I probably should have just went back to the National Guard. That would have been a smarter decision.
Why? What happened?
It was just not a positive environment.
Okay.
I've been, toxic leadership type stuff. It wasn't, it wasn't like, some grand scheme of like, oh, this or that. It was just toxic leadership environment.
Mhm.
And then it just wasn't the place for me.
Mhm.
And it worked out for other people, just wasn't the right place for me.
Mhm.
Right. And that's fine. But I learned a lot. I don't regret being there. I really did learn a lot. The right things to do, the wrong things to do. Things I definitely improved on in myself.
Mhm.
Which is good, and but also it ended up being one of the hardest times in my life as well.
So what kind of challenges did that bring and how did that make it hard for you to come back home?
Well, I mean, so I got married, and at that time, when I went there, me and my former wife were not dating, and she was dating an airman at the time,
Mhm.
but our feelings were never gone, and so later on, we ended up dating, and we got married, and then I deployed immediately after I was getting married. I know it sounds super cliche, immensely cliche, but that wasn't really the intent. That's just kind of how it landed.
Yeah.
And came home from deployment, and same old song and dance of no communication and everything we just talked about on there. And it just spiraled and it got bad because like when our communication got bad, it was, gosh, I lock up because I don't like fighting.
So you were hiding and compartmentalizing and,
Because like I won't fight because I don't like being mean to people. Like, and I'm definitely meaner than most people will ever realize. And I'm not saying that because I think I'm some, Bill,
yeah,
Billy BA, it's, I keep, I'm a very patient and understanding person for a reason. I keep my composure for all these reasons. So, but, when I'm pushed for those reactions, I get upset because it's just like, why do you want? I don't like that part of me. That part of me is reserved for places that aren't here.
right.
So, and so it just like, and then we started being very toxic to each other and, everything we just talked about in that realm of things. And, finally my contract came to an end and there, and I transferred I signed a new contract with the Michigan National Guard. I left.
So your marriage dissolved?
We divorced officially about 6 months
Okay.
later in Michigan.
How did you handle that?
Um,
I mean,
It was-
like, what did that do to you emotionally?
Emotionally, I didn't know how to feel because, excuse me, I really didn't understand what the feelings are supposed to be because nobody wants to get divorced. At least I don't think so. Anyway, at least not to my logic. Nobody should want to get divorced, which is why I don't understand why people go out and party
Right.
when they get divorced and do the sashes and tiaras, celebrations. Like I could be weird. Maybe I'm just not looking at it right.
No, I'm with you. It's
Like the whole,
it's sad.
like the whole photo shoot of them burning their, $20,000 wedding dress. I'm like, why are you doing that? Like,
It was a sacred vow. You were so committed to it at one point, and now it's like,
and you're burning money. Like that's like why are like I'm not, materialistic or anything, but like you could go upset.
yeah.
But I don't know.
So
I
what did
just,
that do to you? Like what kind of emotional state were you in at that point?
I just kind of kept to myself. So I had to really figure it out. I had to put my ducks in a row and just really sort it out because I really didn't understand the the logic.
Did it bring more depression? Did it send you back into depression, or were you in a
I
better
was
place?
I was already pretty I was already kind of deep
Again?
because I didn't have my kid. So
Okay.
and being that far from my kid, even though I did it to myself, but I can't take my kid from now on.
Right. Right.
I have to, those are the seeds I sowed, the seeds that I sowed and or the bed that I made and I had to lay in. So
So did you give up at that point? Did you fight to be a father? Did you, what
I
happened?
have fought at first for like a month and a half, I kind of shut down. I didn't talk to anybody.
Just
I
removed
was-
yourself?
I was like, I didn't want to talk to anybody. I was okay because uh, if I hadn't left, I wouldn't be sitting here today
Mhm.
because that's where I was at.
Oh, like dangerously depressed?
Yeah,
Okay.
I was going to make the unfixable fixation, if you will.
Yeah, I get it, but okay, but you didn't.
I didn't because, and a lot of people think, there's like, well, it's a coward's way out. I'm like, yes and no. Like, yes, in the end, it punishes everybody else for your depression. And I will never condone people committing suicide ever. And I'm not saying this at all, but don't ever hate on somebody that has committed suicide because you have no idea what they have been through
No, it's
whatsoever.
it's so deep and dark, and they honestly, truly, 100% believe that the world would be better off without them, and everybody's suffering will go away if they aren't there.
Like, and a lot of the times, it'll affect one person out of hundreds. And what's one person out of hundreds?
Yeah.
Because most people generally do forget, like, they'll be like, oh yeah, I know.
Yeah.
But that's about the extent of that. I'm not trying to say that to discredit, the people that we have lost, but that's how it goes.
But you didn't.
Right. But I am saying that the depression, this whole depression and how we lose people, like it's so important, and they're the people that you don't realize the
Mhm.
most. And so if somebody's coming to you and they are genuinely asking you for help, you need to listen. You have to listen, because it is not easy for people to actually ask for help and pay attention, because there's a difference between somebody asking for help and asking for attention. Those are two different things. And I think it's pretty obvious, in my opinion. I mean, it's just because I've been around to tell the difference.
Most veterans tell me the 3 hardest words they've ever had to say in their life are, I need help.
Yeah, it is. Because
First responders too.
mhm,
Yeah.
it's not,
It's not an easy place to be.
it isn't, it's really, you almost question, like, why do I even,
So you were in that place for about a month and a half, and then what did you do to pull yourself out?
oh, I wasn't.
A long time, months. So how did you break that? That's because being stuck, saying you're stuck, and actually being stuck and not knowing what to do. And then another day goes by and you don't do anything, and another day goes by, and then so much time passes. How do you take that first step out of complete turmoil?
Well, I definitely did some unconventional things, so I'm not recommend those, but my best friend and my daughter, my best friend was a key factor in it, because he didn't want those things.
But did you reach out to him?
I was living with it.
Okay.
So that's where I was living. It was,
Yeah.
so you're gonna come live with me, Chelsea.
So then what did you do? Did you,
I mean, I started working with, I started working with him at the, where he worked, because I was already working someplace else. I was originally supposed to be working with him to from the get-go. So, budget issue, but so I had to go work someplace else to figure it out. And so I started working with him. I was hanging. We were literally just, it was like being back in high school. We were just hanging out.
so you had companionship and you had somebody to confide in and somebody to rely on, but you were still doing the work yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I didn't, I still had to spend time with myself.
Yeah.
Our desks weren't touching. Like,
Right.
he was still on the other side of the office. So to do things in, sit in my room, like, yeah, we spent most of our day together, but we still, and we went through that program together.
Mm-hmm. So you were
Which
just,
generally you shouldn't do those programs with somebody, you should actually do them without somebody,
Okay.
because that's forcing you to do something out of your comfort zone.
Right.
Completely. But it just kind of worked out that way, and it actually benefited both of us doing that at the same time. It just happened to be the situation that worked in both of our favors.
how long did it take you before you actually felt like yourself, like human again?
Um, Probably around springtime.
So how long
Springtime.
was that?
It was probably, I mean, it was still, even then, it wasn't even like total, but it was definitely, probably about 6 months
Okay.
after I moved.
But of taking daily action, spending time with yourself and reflecting and like doing the things, that wasn't just you sat around and 6 months went by and now here I am feeling better. You were doing things that
No.
brought, yeah.
Yeah.
What were those things?
Everything from I was writing. I was
Writing as in journaling?
journaling. I at the time I was still writing music. Um, Writing a little bit of music, trying to get back into that because I drifted off from it for a while.
Mhm.
I had a counselor I was talking to. Okay.
And that's when you did that for that intensive program?
Yep, did
Okay.
that program. That was a great program.
So definitely you recommend getting involved in some kind of external program to
And
help you.
I will say this, you will see a lot of, there's a handful of people out there that are telling you, don't, forget your feelings, forget that. And they're like, and like, I understand to a certain degree, like I understand what they're saying. Don't let your feelings control you, but like they're kind of taking it to some extremes by telling people like, be a man, do this, do no, like there needs to be a balance.
Definitely.
Balance is everything. You can't let your emotions control you. You have to have balance.
But you can't separate, you can't disassociate from them
They're
either.
mutually exclusive.
Yeah.
Or they're mutually like entangled with one another. So if you start, weighing on one, the other one's gonna start tipping and you're gonna have less. So you have to balance. And it's never a perfect balance. It's never, but it's once you find a pretty decent balance, it's pretty okay
Yeah.
to keep it running. And you're gonna have your ups and downs about it, but I mean, you can journal. I mean, fitness is a huge thing. I love like working out. I mean, right now I'm not. I'm hurt, but
Yeah, but our bodies are meant to move, and when we don't release certain chemicals and neurotransmitters
all about them endorphins.
and the endorphins and all the feel-good hormones, and then you become stagnant and it creates this perpetual stuckness and you're just stuck in your own shit when you're not moving and you're not eating right, you're not thinking right, and then why would you eat right if you're not moving right? And why would you think right if you're not eating right? And it's like that never ending loop that a lot of people get stuck in.
And also companionship is important.
Huge.
And for all of you introverts out there, because I am one not a person entirely. I have like onesie twosie groups. That's more my style. But like companionship is so like, I'm not saying you have to go out and be in a relationship, but like have friends. Like be with people at least a couple times.
In person, not just social media and
Yeah.
being in community.
Turn this off.
Yeah.
You don't need this every second of every day. Like if you're with your friends, unless you're like showing them something, put it on do not disturb and put it on the table. You don't need it when you're hanging out with kids. Because I mean, in the end, watch movies, play a game, go to the park, go on a hike. Like you don't have to go out. Like I've got friends that we literally will sit there and we will just watch movies and have ridiculous commentary. That's literally the entire night. And
but it's not about getting together and talking about all of the garbage that happens in your life and just pouring into each other's pity party and drinking your sorrows away. That's not the connection that we're talking about. This is we're going out for walks together. We're playing games together. It's like the actual, it's like
productive.
The art of living.
Exactly. The art of 100%. Start reading.
Yeah.
Like I am a big reader. I love to read. I'm big into horror books, specifically splatter. Clive Barker's my favorite. Huge Clive Barker fan. So anyway, anytime I talk to people, anybody that loves to read, I'll grab Clive
Mhm.
to go along, because he's got really cool books that are all like intertwined and stuff like that.
Mhm.
But, find friends that are, that love to read, and y'all start reading the same books and start talking. Have like an impromptu book,
Yeah.
talk, club or whatever they're called. And, like, cause like books, there's so much to talk, cause you can dissect books all day long. All day long. You can compare them to, faith, you can compare them to, oh, wow, they got that idea from, the Brothers Grimm stories, or this or that, or that's based off of Helen of Troy, or fill in the blank.
Yeah.
Like, it is crazy what you can do with books. And it's a good way to, again, you're activating your mind, you're socializing, you're not overthinking about the things that don't actually exist,
Mhm.
because you create some of your own by overthinking.
Well, most of your own problems we create. Yeah. So, yeah.
Because like, I will be the first to admit I have about 1,000,001 arguments in my own head by the end of the day, because I get so frustrated with certain people. It's just like, how is this conversation going to go, or how could it?
Yeah.
And then I just get myself so riled up, instead of being more productive doing something else, or listening to something else, or whatever it could have been.
And that's the biggest point, is no matter how deep you think your hole is and how dark you think your life has become, you have to pull you out of it. You have to take a look in the mirror and make the decision of, am I going to keep doing the things that I've been doing that got me to this point and created all of these issues, or am I going to look at new habits or doing new things to pull myself out? And that always involves being in community with people you can connect with. One of the basic needs on the hierarchy of human needs to thrive is community and connection. It's with food and shelter, and it's right there. It's the basic foundation of, I don't know how else to say it besides the art of living.
Yeah, no, that's
We've
perfect.
lost the ability to do that. And that takes us down these depression holes and keeps us from integrating with society. So there is help and there are solutions. You just have to reach out and say those 3 words, I need help. And it might be the hardest 3 words, but it can save your life.
Absolutely.